Empires fall and dynasties vanish, yet one creature refuses to disappear. It moves through the centuries like a shadow that cannot be burned away, slipping from one age into the next without losing its power. It has worn many faces and answered to many names. Huli Jing in the old Chinese kingdoms, a fox spirit of such beauty and cunning that kings lost their thrones to it. Kitsune in Japan, the divine messenger whose wisdom is matched only by its talent for deception. Gumiho in Korea, a predator wrapped in human skin, feeding on the life of those who dared to trust it. And in more recent tales, whispered by those who claim to have seen its colossal form under a burning sky, it has been called Kurama, a name spoken with fear even among those who do not believe in spirits. But no matter the form, no matter the language that gives it a title, it is always the same being, the nine-tailed fox, ageless, calculating, and patient beyond human measure. Legends do not agree on where it came from, because it seems to have always been here, already ancient when the first cities were still mud and stone. It watches rulers rise and fall, not as a passive witness, but as a force that can shape the end. In one lifetime, it might be a protector, guiding a village through famine. In the next, it may walk into a royal court and whisper a single sentence that drives an empire into ruin. The 9 tails it carries are not decoration. Each one is a mark of centuries survived, each a fragment of power and memory from ages lost. To face it is to face a creature that knows the deepest fears of your ancestors and the hidden desires of your own heart. It does not fight unless it must. It does not need to. It wins by making others fight for it, twisting loyalty and love into weapons sharper than any blade. Those who have tried to bind it with magic or steel have only delayed their fate. It waits, and waiting is what it has done since before history began. Somewhere, under one of its many names, it is still walking among us, wearing the face that best suits the time, and planning for the day it will decide that the world needs to be changed again. Long before her name was softened into the playful tales told in later centuries, the 9-tailed fox first appeared in the heart of ancient China as something far more dangerous. In the days of the Erlitou culture, around 2200 BC, over 4,000 years ago, the people carved symbols into jade and bone, showing a fox with more tails than any natural creature, a figure not of the forests, but of the spirit world. These early depictions carried no warmth. The fox was a force to be respected, feared, and if possible, avoided. By the time its legend reached the ink of the Shanhaijing, the classic of mountains and seas, it had already taken on a name that would echo for millennia: Huli Jing. In these accounts, she is not a passive myth. She is a spirit capable of walking into the lives of men and bending them to her will, appearing as a beautiful woman whose elegance hides a predator's hunger. The most infamous telling comes from the end of the Shang dynasty, when a king named Zhou welcomed a woman named Dazi into his palace. According to the storytellers, Dazi was no mortal at all, but a Huli Jing wearing human skin, sent either by the heavens as punishment or by the chaos of the spirit realm itself. Under her influence, the court became a place of cruelty and excess. Feasts lasted until the stores ran dry, while the people starved outside the walls. Executions were staged for amusement, and the king's advisors were replaced by flatterers and sycophants. The Huli Jing fed on this decay, not with teeth, but with manipulation, each whispered suggestion pushing the ruler closer to collapse. When the Zhou forces finally stormed the capital, they found an empire already rotting from within. The king was overthrown, Daji was executed, and the Shang dynasty was reduced to ashes. Yet the destruction was not seen as the end of her story. To those who believed, the fall of the Shang was proof of her true nature, a being who could topple an empire without raising a single claw. The Huli Jing of these early tales was not a misunderstood guardian or a trickster with a sense of humor. She was a weapon of misfortune, a seducer whose beauty was as sharp as any blade, and whose patience meant she could spend years weaving the downfall of a kingdom. In the minds of the people, she was not simply a warning against temptation, but a reminder that the greatest threats to a realm might not come from enemy armies, but from the smiling stranger already sitting at the king's side. When the nine-tailed fox crossed the sea and took root in Japan, her image shifted, but the change was not as simple as turning a villain into a saint. In this new land, she became known as the Kitsune, a figure woven deeply into the Shinto faith and the worship of Inari, the god of rice, prosperity, and fertility. Here, the fox could be a guardian, a divine messenger whose presence was a blessing to farmers and merchants alike. Yet the reverence she earned never erased the unease she inspired. Even in her most benevolent form, the Kitsune was still a creature of cunning, with a mind sharper than any blade and motives that humans could never fully read. The storytellers described her as a being of shifting beauty, able to appear as a flawless human one moment and a blazing fox the next. In her true form, her 9 tails shimmered like strands of spun gold, each one catching the light differently, creating an almost hypnotic display. Her eyes were said to change color with her mood, deep amber in moments of calm, icy silver when displeased, and a piercing crimson when provoked. Some claimed the Kitsune could step between worlds, vanishing into mist or appearing at a traveler's side in an instant. She carried the authority of a messenger from the divine, but also the independence of a spirit that bowed to no mortal law. There were tales of Kitsune guarding shrines from thieves, warning villages of approaching danger, and even rewarding those who showed kindness with wealth or protection. But there were just as many stories of her turning a cruel or greedy man's life into ruin, exposing corruption through clever trickery. In these moments, the Kitsune's divine role and her ancient predatory instinct were indistinguishable. Those who encountered her never knew which side they would face. Was the fox standing before them a protector sent to guide their steps, or the same ageless predator who once whispered the end of a dynasty into a king's ear? In Japan, the answer could be both. The old hunger of the Huli Jing was still there, wrapped now in the robes of a guardian, and the same patience that had watched empires fall now watched the shrines and fields. Whether she came to bless or to punish depended not on her nature, but on yours. In Korea, the 9-tailed fox took on one of her darkest and most feared shapes, known as the Gumiho. Here there was no ambiguity, no chance that she might be a guardian in disguise. The Gumiho was a predator in the purest sense, a hunter who walked among humans wearing the face of a perfect lover. In these tales, her beauty was unmatched, her charm irresistible, and her patience infinite. She would cross paths with her prey by chance or design, her every gesture calculated to draw them closer. Once trust was secured, the feeding began. Legends say the Gumiho sustains herself on the life force of men, drawing it out through prolonged contact, sometimes with a kiss, sometimes with a simple touch that lingers too long. Her victims rarely noticed the theft until it was too late. Their bodies weakened, their eyes dulled, and their strength slipped away as if stolen by an illness no healer could name. The stories are filled with warnings disguised as narratives. Hunters in the mountains who came across a lone woman in fine silk robes, unmarked by the dirt and wear of travel. Soldiers returning from war who found comfort in the company of a stranger whose eyes seemed to know too much. They would vanish from their homes days or weeks later, their bodies found pale, cold, and empty. Some versions tell of the Gumiho taking her victims' hearts or livers, not as trophies, but as a ritual to deepen her power. Others speak of her simply discarding their husks when there was nothing left to take. Unlike the Kitsune, the Gumiho offers no redemption, no moment where her nature bends toward mercy. She is closer to the Huli Jing of the earliest Chinese fears, the spirit who destroys without hesitation when desire or hunger calls. Yet even here, in the shadows of her cruelty, her intelligence and skill in manipulation remain unmatched. Villages told of men vanishing after a single night in her presence, of wealthy officials brought to ruin by an unseen hand that guided them into disgrace. No wall or weapon could stop her, because she did not strike in battle. She struck in the heart, in the mind, in the desires that a man would never admit to having. The Gumiho was, and remains, a warning that the most dangerous predator is not the one you see coming, but the one you invite into your home. Centuries after the Huli Jing, Kitsune, and Gumiho had carved their marks into the myths of different lands, the nine-tailed fox emerged again under a new name, Kurama. In this incarnation, she was no longer a whisper in a king's ear or a shadow in the bedchamber of a doomed lover. Kurama was vast, a living storm of fur and fury, her form stretching higher than the tallest gates, and her tails blotting out the sky. Where earlier tales spoke of subtle manipulation or patient schemes, this version carried the raw, unrestrained force of a natural disaster. The ancient cunning remained, but it was now paired with a body built for destruction, every movement radiating power. Witnesses in these modern legends describe a presence that feels like the weight of a collapsing mountain, a pressure in the air that makes breathing difficult before she is even seen. Her 9 colossal tails no longer shimmer like silk or drift like ribbons in the wind. They whip and curl with the strength to shatter stone, glowing faintly as if each one holds a core of burning energy. The eyes are the same in all ages, however, intelligent, unblinking, and certain of their place above mortal life. To call her Kurama is to acknowledge that this is not a reinvention, but an escalation, the same spirit distilled and magnified into something that no longer needs the pretense of disguise. In this form, she is a culmination of every role she has played before. The seducer's precision of the Huli Jing, the divine authority of the Kitsune, the predator's hunger of the Gumiho, all compressed into a single being that commands attention the moment she appears. Some storytellers frame Kurama as a guardian spirit turned to wrath, others as the endpoint of the fox's long journey toward reclaiming her full strength. Either way, her presence in these more recent accounts follows the same pattern that has marked her path through history. She arrives when change is inevitable, when balance is broken, and she leaves only when her influence has burned itself into the world she touches. Kurama's scale and power may seem like something new, but beneath the form and the name, she is still the same 9-tailed fox that slipped from one culture to another for over 4,000 years, adapting to the fears and beliefs of each. The names fade, the shapes shift, yet the spirit endures, watching for the next moment when the world will give her reason to act. Across the centuries, the 9-tailed fox has crossed more than oceans and mountains. She has crossed the borders of memory itself. In the northern steppes, nomadic tribes spoke of a golden-tailed spirit that appeared before great battles, sometimes guiding riders to victory, sometimes leading them into fatal ambushes. In the forests of Vietnam, hunters told of a pale fox that walked through mist with human eyes, offering safe passage to those who left her an offering, and vanishing into the trees with those who didn't. Along the old trade routes between China and Japan, merchants carried charms carved with 9 sweeping lines, claiming they warded off the shape-changing woman who would appear in roadside inns, her presence so unremarkable until the moment her tails unfolded like a fan of blades. Even in more recent times, stories persist in remote villages of a stranger seen in a festival crowd who leaves no footprints and casts no shadow, or of a massive silhouette glimpsed against the clouds before a storm. These accounts are scattered, but the patterns are the same. The fox appears where fate hangs in the balance, and she always leaves with more than she arrived. The Kitsune's talent for adapting to new roles, the Huli Jing's taste for the fall of the powerful, the Gumiho's hunger for the life of the unwary, all are threads woven into the same endless tapestry. Today, the name Kurama may carry her weight, but the mask can change in a heartbeat. And when it does, the world will convince itself that this is a new spirit, a new threat, or perhaps even a new savior. It will not matter. In every face she wears, the 9 tails still move, silent markers of an age-old game. Somewhere, she is already choosing the next name, the next land, the next story that will carry her forward. And when you hear it, you may believe it is the first time. You will be wrong.